Oh, all right. So open the webinar. People are starting to come in, and I'll let people get settled in here for a few minutes. So I fill a little bit of airtime while we're doing this, and make sure that, yep, okay, I've got the recording going. Okay, everything's good on that. Okay, welcome everybody. I'm Julie Slavinsky. I'm the Director of Events here at Warwick's. And we have, okay, we've got Canada in the house today. Every one of the ladies that you see on screen, with the exception of me, are all from Canada. So let's go around the room and find out where everybody's from. Nina, where are you joining us from today?
Just north of Montreal.
Okay. And then Robyn, where are you at?
I'm in Vancouver, BC.
All right. And
Well,
Rachel?
we're all over the place. I'm in Toronto.
Have the entire country of Canada pretty much covered.
Oh,
It's really fun. Rachel and I were saying, it's like this, I think, is the first time that it's been mainly Canadian.
All except Bryn Turnbull and I. We'll have to get her back for her new book, Berlin Apartment.
Yes.
It's so good. But she lives in Toronto. We actually are like real life friends, hang out in Toronto. So it's really fun that Canada is out there.
I love it. I love it. Love every minute of it. So for those of you that are new to coming into events with us virtually, Rachel and I do a lot of virtual events together. It's so much fun, and I adore you for doing it. By the way, there is a little package on its way to you from our friend Deb Harkness.
Oh my goodness.
Just a little side note there. But for those of you, Warwick's is located in San Diego, La Jolla area of San Diego in California. And so while we can ship to the United States, unfortunately, we have all these Canadian authors, but we don't ship to Canada. But there's great independent bookstores in Canada. So you will be able to get
indie. Everyone shop indie. There's a million indie bookstores, and the ones in Toronto definitely have and I'm on blurred, but these two books. And Julie, I know that there's a kismet, there's an affinity between indie bookstores all over the globe,
all over the world. So wherever
we're a similar purpose. You honor Warwick's in Canada if you order from an indie bookstore in Canada.
Absolutely. For those of you that are in the United States, though, if you do order from Warwick's, I'll be putting the links into the comment section of the webinar here. We have signed books plates for both Nina and Robyn. So go ahead and order the book from us if you're in the US, and we'll make sure that you get a book with a book plate with that too. So the other thing, but if you're in the San Diego area, come by and see us. So we'll always love everybody to come by the store. I'm actually in my office, and the store is just like actually out right there. So I should open that door and let everybody see what it looks like. For Rachel is going to talk with Nina and Robyn for about 35-ish minutes. We always love audience questions. So I know that everybody's very familiar with Zoom, but doing my due diligence here. Bottom of the screen, there's a Q&A button. Go ahead and pop your questions in there, and I will bring those to them after they're done with their conversation. So doing my due diligence and introducing these lovely ladies here. Excuse me. And we have, so Robyn Harding is the best-selling author of The Drowning Woman, The Perfect Family, The Swap, The Arrangement, Her Pretty Face, and The Party. Lots of great books. She has also written and executive produced an independent film. As she said, she lives in Vancouver with her family, and I love this, 2 cute but deadly rescue chihuahuas that I think you said are 2 floors below you, correct?
We hopefully won't hear them.
They're deadly. I love that. I love deadly chihuahuas.
Deadly chihuahuas. She's here today with her new book, The Haters. She's got the picture of that right in the back there. There it is. And joining her also is Nina Laurin. Nina studied creative writing at Concordia University in Montreal, where she currently lives, as she said. She arrived there when she was just 12 years old, and she speaks and reads in Russian, French, and English, but writes her novels in English. She wrote her first novel while getting her writing degree, and Girl Last Seen was a bestseller a year later in 2017. She's here with her new book, The Last Thing She Saw. There it is. That's it. And like we said, joining her is our wonderful Rachel McMillan. Rachel has done dozens of our virtual events, and in addition to being an amazing author, she's also a literary agent and all around, I think, busiest person in this business. And like we said, she lives in Toronto too. So with that, ladies, have a great conversation, and I'll see you in a little bit.
Thanks, Julie.
Thank you.
Thanks, Robyn and Nina. It's so really cool that you're from Canada, because we do these. Sometimes we do them from people in all different time zones. One time we had a poor author who was calling it a friend of mine who's in London, UK, and it was like 1 a.m. for her. So I know we're all in different time zones, and it's quite exciting. You're both really well-known names in Canada, and we have lots of mutual friends and colleagues. So I've heard your names pop up, that when Julie reached out and said, hey, would you mind hosting this? I was like, obviously. And so I figured I'd start with a few individual questions for each of you. And then I've got some questions about your genre, about how brilliant you both are at pacing and stylistic aspects of your books. But Robyn, I thought I'd start with you and the haters, because you're tapping into something that is really quite always a hot topic nowadays, which is writing and social media and trolls and stalkers online and everything that authors and readers talk about, for good or ill. What was the most disturbing part in writing this? Your research or your imagination of what could possibly happen to an author with a new book in the world?
Yeah, I think it was my imagination, because when I put this book out in the world, I was like, I've just given someone a roadmap to my worst nightmare as an author. The way you could, if you wanted to come for me, this is exactly the way. And unfortunately, it is inspired by some real life hate that I have received. Nothing as dramatic as the book, but I think most of my author friends that I talk to, Nina, I've never actually asked you this, but most of my female writer friends have had these kind of sort of attacks, either through their website, through social media, just the kind of, I feel very comfortable telling you what's wrong with you and what's wrong with your book and what's wrong with your writing. And, that's unpleasant, but I had one message that really went much darker than that, and that's what inspired this book. So then I had to imagine, it being completely, leading to murder. So that's where I went with the haters. And yeah, it was scary for myself as a writer.
I once had a book come out that was a historical novel set in Toronto, and I write about St. James Cathedral in that book a lot, which is one of the churches in Toronto. Not the church I attend, but I had a guy write me and say, I showed up in Toronto today at St. James just in case you were there. And I'm like, whoa, that's way too close to home. Like, what? Okay. That's taking it too far. And I think you're right that, Bryn, my friend Bryn, has had an actual stalker who was writing HarperCollins lots of mail. So it is something that we have to be very aware about, but also something that we have to leverage as virtue. Nina and I were talking a little bit before that often writers were not extroverted out there people. We have to be nowadays because of the promotion of the job. But I thought you handled it really well. And I thought you instilled, which I think was the purpose, a really good fear of, oh my gosh, what is going on here? And I just think that you confronted, you're a multiple best-selling author who is writing about the dangers of trolls, offended readers, one-star reviews. And you didn't mention, but is there one personal moment or one thing that triggered, hey, I think this could lead to a story idea?
Yeah, so it was one email I got. Usually I've had some sort of unpleasant ones over the years, but I got one that was actually really abusive. It was from a man, and he had read my novel, The Perfect Family. And, he'd actually read it, which was kind
refreshing
of,
instead of,
yeah, I know. And he'd taken real offense to one specific scene, and was going on about that, and then it just went off the rails, and he was calling me a Karen, he was swearing at me, he was accusing me of being involved in all these conspiracy theories, and then at the end he said, you look like God ironed Sarah Palin. And I was just like, I don't even know what that means, but like, now you're coming up my looks, like, It was just, so I actually, I was very upset because, you know, you're sitting in your home and you're with your family and you pull out your phone and then you've got this horrible vitriolic message. So I tweeted about it. I'm not on Twitter anymore, but I did tweet about it. And so many writers came out of the woodwork saying,
their
"Oh, I got one
stories.
like this and I got one like that." And so I thought, this is something that anyone who puts themselves out there in any way, like a business, your journalist, your any kind of person in the public eye, has to deal with this. It's just part of the job nowadays. So I felt like there was something really relatable in this experience.
And I think we can, as Canadian authors, say that because we're in Canada and Twitter and social media is largely a lot of American readers, a lot of people from the States just assume that we're American. So they end up lashing out and name calling us politically centric things that have nothing to do with where we live.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
you dumb dem. And I'm like, I can't even vote there.
Although this guy, I don't know where he was, but he accused me of being involved in a sort of Loblaws conspiracy. So, you know,
Oh, so he
Loblaws
might
is
have
the
been
big
a
grocery brand. He
Canadian
might have been Canadian, or else he just knew about this. So I don't know. It was
Could be
really,
someone here.
yeah, it was some serious mental illness
What
going
a
on.
what a
but-
boring conspiracy. Loblaws grocery store.
bread fixing,
and
bread price fixing.
yes, we have a bread price scandal, everybody. It's you know, it's absolutely scintillating news. So I really thought while reading this, and I don't know if you had read R.F. Kuang's Yellow Face,
I
but
did,
I thought
yes,
that
I
they'd
did.
make, even though they're slightly different genres, there's still that page turning look at obsession and trolls. And one of the things that really struck me about both novels is that you create a work within a work. You create a meta work, which is Burnt Orchid, which gets fabulous reviews. Reviews that I think most writers might actually like to have, like live through. Oh my gosh, this is amazing. Was that a fun voice to play with? And when did you decide, I think I'd like to put in some Burnt Orchid?
Yeah. So I felt like the story needed it because I usually write from multiple points of view, and the haters is from one point of view. So I felt like it needed some sort of fleshing out maybe. And I also felt that readers needed the opportunity to decide for themselves whether the accusations that are leveled against Cameron, that she's exploiting the teenage students she works with, whether there was any merit to them. So the excerpts from the book are about teenage girls going through a very serious crisis. And so, you know, readers can kind of decide, oh, I believe Cameron, she didn't mean to do anything, or maybe these are hitting too close to home, or what have you. So yeah, and it was fun to do because I was trying to really write not like myself, you know, like to separate it from the narrative. So not Robyn Harding's voice, but Cameron Lane's voice. So yeah, it was fun, and it's not like anything I normally would write, and I did enjoy doing that. And I've had a lot of people say, write that book. I want to read that whole book.
I was like, when's Burnt Orchid coming? It could happen. And I did. This segs very nicely because I did notice the switch from multiple POVs to a very arresting and immediate first person POV. How much of you is in Cameron? Because we really get a deep dive into her.
Yeah. So, you know, she lives in the same city I live in, and she has the same career I have. But you know, we're at very different phases. So I sort of reached back to when I was a debut, which was 20 years ago when my first novel was published, and how optimistic I was, and how I thought you know, it was all going to be smooth sailing from here, and there would be no bumps in the road. And once you got in, you were in. And, you know, so I kind of she's sort of like a more naive version of myself, but she also has a much more complicated personal life than I do. Thankfully, she's got, you know, she's divorced, she's a single mother, she co-parents with her husband and his new wife, and there's tension between them. She has a much younger boyfriend that she cares about, but they don't necessarily have that much in common. She has, friend issues. She has a lot more complexity in her life, by design, because I wanted there to be, lots of potential for suspects. And also she has a job that I've never had that is, that's a really serious job, being a counselor for
Yes.
teenagers in a high school. In, today's world, that's a lot of responsibility.
And you handled it so well. And I did want to, there is such a cinematic feeling to, I always think any of your books could be prospective films, both of you actually. And you have dabbled in film before. Does that inform how you see perhaps a storyboard of a story? Are you a visual plotter first and then the words come after?
Yeah, so I do use screenplay structure when I'm sort of, doing a rough outline of a novel. But I just got asked this recently, and I had to think about it, like whether I see my scenes, or whether I tell my scenes, like see them as words or see them as pictures. And I said, I'm sort of, this sounds sort of woo-woo, but I'm sort of in my scenes. I'm almost acting them, right? So when I'm in my head, I'm sort of am that character. And I was being interviewed by Hank Philippi Ryan, who is a
Oh,
prolific,
she's amazing.
and she's a prolific author and a journalist. And she said she does the same, and that she goes, her posture changes when she's writing different characters or different scenes. And I wonder if it does. I've never noticed, because I feel like I'm kind of like, yeah, like I feel almost like I'm acting when I'm trying to go so into the character and be in the scene. So it's not really seeing it, it's sort of being a part of it, if that makes sense.
I love that. Dickens used to do that. He used to act it out in front of a mirror. And I did some work for the Tall Poppy
we're so
Writers.
similar, Dickens and I. No.
Oh, same thing. It was Dickensian. But I did some work for the Tall Poppy Writers last year, and I got to know Hank a little bit, and she's amazing.
Yes,
so thank you so much. I will get back to you with a few questions in a bit. But Nina, I am, of course, a pretty proud patriotic Canadian, and it's so nice that I was able to read rural Quebec. I mean, obviously you're from north of Montreal. The Quebec setting is wonderful. And for readers who haven't spent a lot of time fictionally in Quebec, you have probably spent some time with the Gamache series by Louise Penny. I wondered if when you first began, if there was any pressure to set your books in an American space, because I know that it ebbs and flows as a literary agent and as an author. I've had moments where, I'm with HarperCollins and they've said, no, European please, or American please. Did you feel any pressure to write somewhere else, or were you like, no, this is a Quebec story. I'm from Quebec. This is what we're doing.
Well, this is a really good question, because yes, of course I did. Even when I was starting out, there's a reason that the first 4 books are set in the States. Yeah. Back then, I really felt like there was no possibility, nowhere to go with the book set in Canada. I was just kind of getting just rejections without even requests. Just I got the feeling nobody wants this. Okay, I changed the setting to US, and then it started going a little better. So now I was scared, and I'm like, I'm gonna stick with the US setting. But then it was during COVID. I was like, yeah, exactly, well, I am here in Quebec, and yeah, we're doing this. I'm gonna set this book here. Yeah, I could have set it in the States. I was a little bit self-conscious about it. I did have that lingering fear, nobody would want this, the readers won't care. But it's a story that had to take place here for many reasons, plot reasons, and also other reasons that, well, I want to get into that later, because, well, it's based on true events that happened not far from where I live. And I felt it was kind of doing it a disservice to just go ahead and change the setting to an American setting, to say nothing of the fact that a flood like that would have been handled completely differently in the States.
And
It's
I've had,
yeah.
you know, in my literary agent job, I'm now at a point where a few editors have said, "Oh, Canada, it's so exotic." I'm like, really, really?
Oh, we're exotic. Okay,
Is
okay, because I
exotic
have
the
more.
word we're going
Wait.
for? But yeah, I do find, and I'm going to ask you this in a bit, but I do find that your setting is so immersive. And I can understand how after COVID and after everybody being locked down for a long time, people, it doesn't matter where the setting is as long as it takes you outside of where you've been, right? So this is a novel that has a lot of dark and heavy material. It is excavating a crime and some horrific events in 1979. How do you decompress after immersing yourself in that world? Are there any tips and tricks that you can turn off that part of Nina and remove yourself from it? Because I can imagine it was quite unsettling to live mentally in this space for a while.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I tend to immerse myself in my characters, kind of what like Robyn said. I change physically almost while I write them. I really get into the story. With my debut, it was absolutely terrible. I actually developed depression from writing that main character. And well, this one, it got pretty heavy too, because once again, there's, well, it's not a spoiler to say it's about a flood, but there is another thing there that is based also on something that happened not far. Well, my thing is to like read or watch something light or funny. My go-to is like Mel Brooks.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Because I like him because he's comedy, but with a statement. So you're not just watching something mindless, not that that's not helpful, but Mel Brooks films always try to say something. And I find that a really enriching experience. He's so subversive. And I did want to talk about your publishing journey, you know, my debut came out in 2016, so I haven't been around as long as Robyn has, but I just turned in book like 24, so I've written a lot. And
That's
I don't believe there's anything as an overnight success in writing. And obviously you worked really hard and you did a creative writing program. Your publishing journey, however, is still unique because you worked on the book through your degree, and then you landed a contract and the bestseller list pretty impressively soon. Did that, you know, Robyn was talking about how she was able to learn the ebbs and flows of publishing by the time she got to writing Cameron's story. Did that affect your expectations and approach to publishing? Because it's a bit of a switch. It's a wonderful thing. I mean, I'm just like, you're so cool. But how did that change your vision of publishing and how you approach the books that you write?
Well, this one time when I was a toddler, USSR swimming instructor like saw me crying on the edge of the swimming pool for little ones, and so as this was the USSR, she picked me up and chucked me in the pool. Well, and so this was kind of like that. I felt like somebody just chucked me into this whole world of publishing with very little guidance. I don't know what to do, what to say, how to interact with people. And okay, I watched to come to New York to Thriller Fest like 2 weeks after I got my book deal. And okay, I will do that. And I fangirled over people, and it was just general embarrassment. And I still think about that at 3 a.m. But well, I guess it's all material for future books.
Yeah.
I am gonna write something meta like a Robyn did.
Oh, you should. Oh, I think you'd be brilliant at that. Don't you, Robyn? I think you'd be wonderful at that.
Of course.
And you know, we've got a book here that has some witchcrafts, some conspiracy, and a truly haunting setting that take the reader right into rural Quebec. And I noticed how well you paint your canvas, so I knew you were familiar with it, but you kind of preempted this question. How much is truth and how much is fiction? And where did the kernel of this story come from?
Oh, well, yeah, I can answer that I can elaborate on that a lot. Here, well, it got kind of memory hold almost because of COVID and everything, but right before that, there was a big incident where I live. There was a dam that basically, I live by a lake. well, not me, but the town is on the side of a lake. And the lowest parts of the town, well, there is a dam that keeps the lake from overflowing. And in the spring, when the lake was at its highest, the dam that had not been maintained as well as it should have, it collapsed. 1/3 of the town flooded, and people lost their homes. It was absolutely terrible. The army had to be brought in. They evacuated people in the middle of the night. It was quite. And well, the actual plot of the book, there was no dead body found in it, but it took me a while to be able to write about it.
Yeah.
It took me actually, it was 2021 that I actually sat down and started working on the idea, because I was kind of traumatized by all that. It was like I remember I went out to get something at the dépanneur, and this guy comes running towards me, and I'm like, what's going on? He's like, leave, the dam broke down. I'm like, what's going on? I didn't even know. We had just moved in the year before. I didn't even know what was going on. So I went home and I gathered all my stuff, and I gathered my baby bag, because my son was 6 months old, and I sat there waiting to be evacuated. Because it didn't reach us finally, but it was a very tense few hours. So it took me a while to process that enough to even think of it in terms of fiction. And I actually took the inspiration, since it's not the only place in the province where something like that happened. What the actual plot of the book, where it comes from, it's from a similar thing happening in a town in Beauce, Saint-Marie, and there it was very tragic, because the historic town center got completely destroyed. It had to be demolished, and it was 150 years old, and with a lot of very beautiful buildings, very unique to and representative of the place, and it got completely destroyed. And from that, I started working on an idea, like an older town, and you have secrets that come up from previous generations, and that sort of sparked the idea. And of course, there is the other thing. Well, I don't want to talk about it because it's a bit of a spoiler, but yeah, that happened right here, right where once again.
Did you find it therapeutic to be able to write about that experience in fiction, to have that out there? Did it help you be able to work through some things in your mind?
Oh, for sure, for sure. I mean, it's part of the reason we all write.
Yeah. And I just think
fears.
But I think that's what's so brilliant about these two books, is that they use quite a thrilling genre and quite a wonderful platform in order to excavate and exhume some very human fears. Obviously, they're set in completely different worlds, and the fears arise from completely different experiences. But if you're studying at a college creative writing course and you need to compare two books, this is it. This is where you're going right now. And so questions for both of you. And Robyn, I'll start with you. Most of the books I write are historical fiction. And of course, I get lost in the weeds of descriptions, and I will sit and describe a church for 18,000 pages. You have such amazing pacing and suspense that the pages keep turning. So my question for you is, how much of it, and I think you kind of answered it because you're a film person, but do you allow yourself to fall down any rabbit holes while you're writing?
Yeah, I do, but I am very cautious about it. I keep my chapters really short. They're like 5-page chapters. I will cut things if I go too far down a rabbit hole. I'm quite ruthless with myself at this stage of the game, because I do think pacing, for my own enjoyability as a reader, I need a book to
go.
You know, so I want to provide that to people when I write. So, you know, sometimes I will go down a rabbit hole, but then as I read through, I do a lot of rereading as I go. I reread it, of course, the whole thing at the end, but I'm I'm not an ugly first draft person. I'm always kind of fine tuning and rereading. So, you know, I will be ruthless and cut stuff if it's slowing the pacing, I think.
You're an intentional first draft person. I love
Yeah,
that.
I
You
am,
know
I
where
am.
you're going. And for you, Nina, was there anything that you followed down a rabbit hole, but then you had to kind of cut, or it wasn't working in the story? Because your book has so much sumptuous depth, but it also is, it's a page turner.
Oh, thank you. I'm basically the total opposite of you, Robyn. I will go and describe the interiority of my characters for 10 chapters if you let me. And it is my editor who has to be like, yeah, nope, shred, cut. But it's crucial information. No, it's bogging down the pacing. Remove it. Fine. So, well, if I have much of my good pacing can be credited to Alex Logan and Grant Sand. So yeah, but I'm gonna mention another Canadian author here, Emily St. John Mandel.
She's so good.
Yeah, well, she does this, like, she can do this. She can go on for pages and pages with like the characters' interior lives, and like she gets away with it. Why can't I?
She's so literary.
Yeah, exactly.
Which, by the way, but literally, yeah,
I know,
there's a whole
right?
different discussion. I mean, she's wonderful, but you're right. There seems to be different rules dependent on the visibility.
Marketing.
Too. That's what I noticed. Like her books also fly by somehow.
Yeah, she's a great writer.
One thing I was just going to say that I learned in screenwriting that goes toward what Nina said is I like character profiles. So I do that. It's just not in the book, right? So I write a profile for my, you know, my main characters, and I know a lot about them. Like I go quite deep into their childhood and their relationships and their birth order and their past, you know, like I do all this stuff, and then some of it makes it in and some of it doesn't, but I feel like I know them so well by the time I start writing that at least it advises how they act in the book. So maybe that would, maybe then you would still get it out, Nina.
And you're taking
I'm compelled to put that in there anyway.
Yeah. I have a friend here in Toronto who's had some very successful books with Berkeley with Random House. Once Persuaded, Twice Shy, and Jane and Edward. She retells classic stories in contemporary Toronto, and the second one is set in Niagara-on-the-Lake. And she actually did some training at the Second City Improv, so that her dialogue is actually influenced by that. And I thought that was so fascinating. And I think it's so neat that you've done screenwriting, Robyn. And I think, you know, Nina, it's amazing that you started with a creative writing program. Not every author opens the door to publishing through that. And I'm cognizant of people's time. And honestly, you both answered some questions before I got to them because you're so smart. So I did want to ask if there was any genre that you haven't written in that you'd love to try sometime.
Nina, anything for you?
Well, there's lots actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I guess I've once again Emily St. John Mandel comes in. I always wanted kind of a like a kind of literary post-apocalyptic thing like that, or How High We Go in the Dark, something like that. That really calls to me for some reason.
You have the voice. You've got the chops for it. You could do
maybe
it.
I just need to find yeah, I will give it a shot.
You could totally do it. Yeah, I feel like there's some really interesting speculative fiction right now. Like I read The Other Valley by, I think his name is Scott Alexander Howard. He's actually from Vancouver. It is brilliant. Nina, I think you would really like it. It's about three valleys in a future. The Other Valley, where you're 18 in one valley, you're 38 in another valley, and you're 58 in another. And you can request to move between valleys. And for some reason, it's sort of French. I don't know why, but everything's sort of French. And it's really fascinating. It's really, really interesting. But I think I would not, I'm quite comfortable in my thriller zone. I used to write humor. That's what I used to write.
Yes.
And loved doing it. I had so much fun with it, and I kind of miss it sometimes, but I feel
you still have that acerbic edge. I mean, that doesn't go away. And humor's hard. I judged the Leacock Award a lot because I'm from Orillia, Ontario. That's my hometown.
Yeah.
And I'm good friends with Terry Follis, who's always somehow there. So humor is a tough one because it's so subjective, but I do find that you have such a wonderful way of infusing your work with maybe not humor in a ha-ha way out loud, more in a I understand human detriment and foibles and triumphs, and you have such a wonderful way of capturing the way both of you do, the way humans act and react to things. And so I will pass it back to Julie now, but I think you're both really amazing, and it's quite wonderful to see that you've done so well and been so best-selling from Canada in the American marketplace. So I'm very, very proud to be from the same place that both of you are. You're both wonderful writers, and best of luck with these releases and the next ones.
Thank you. And thank you for your excellent questions, Rachel.
Thank you so much.
They were such a great interview. Love it, Rachel. So we actually have a question from Dustin, who wants to know, and Nina, we'll start with you, then we'll go to Robyn, and we're actually going to throw this to you too, Rachel, because you might have an answer to this one. Dustin wants to know, what are your favorite thrillers set in Canada?
Other than Robyn, of course. I like Jennifer Hillier.
Oh, you took mine.
Yes, okay. Well, it's totally addictive, isn't it? Okay, well, we can both have this.
Yeah, I like, well, there's not that many set in Canada. I know I really honestly loved Nina's book. It gave me very much Under the Bridge vibes. If anyone's watching that Hulu series, when I was reading Nina's book, I was like, oh my God, this is these, troubled girls, and it's so dark and moody, and I loved it. And Jennifer Hillier, a lot of her books are sort of set in Seattle and Toronto and Vancouver, and she kind of moves all over in Canada, but it is a little bit hard to find other than yours and mine that are books that are set in Canada in this genre.
Yeah, I would say another one. She's not set in, but as a Canadian, if you want good Canadian thriller author, Samantha Bailey is one who comes to mind.
Yeah.
She's fantastic. She lives in Toronto. I'm a huge historical fiction fan, and so I would say that they're thriller not in the same way as the psychological suspense, but I'm a huge C.C. Humphreys fan. I've read his books since I was a teenager, and he has written a series of books about Jack Absolute, who is a British redcoat during the time of the Plains of Abraham. And so we get this amazing Quebec history. It's really robust, but the thrilling and the suspense is there's a bit of espionage, there's a bit of spy thriller, there's a bit of trying to survive, a really robust sense of history in what was equivalent to like a Revolutionary War that you would see in America, 1776, Hamilton, all of that. So that's a really good question. And I think that I'm probably with Robyn and Nina that I will think of 18,000 more once we hang up this call.
Usually how it goes, isn't it? But Robyn, I'm so glad you mentioned the book, The Other Valley, because it's on my short stack of, I haven't read it yet, but every person I've talked to that has read it says it's just amazing.
It's so thought-provoking.
I wrote it down.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. I think everyone will love it.
Yep. So with that, I always like to ask that question, Nina, and I'll toss it up to Nina, Rachel, and Robyn, if you have another one. Any books besides that you've read lately that have really struck a chord with you? I know this is always the hard question. Nina, we'll go to Rachel. Rachel, you got anything?
I just want to Google, because I always forget the author's name and I'm a terrible person, but remember, it is evening here, and I've been booking all day, but
I have one.
I loved The Ministry of Time. by Kalian Bradley. I don't know if that's how you pronounce her name. It is a new, oh, Julie, you need this
No,
book.
I read it. I did read that.
Okay,
It's
it's
so
good.
It's so good.
Anyway, if you it plays with voice and humor and genre and
because it's the time travel guy who comes back from 1700s
yes,
England, right?
It's so cool.
But it's got like
so
spy
good.
stuff going on.
Oh, and if you've read The Terror, I can't remember the name but that fated ship exploration.
Franklin
I'm obsessed.
He's
Me
from the character who comes forward is from the Franklin expedition.
It's
and so
really
it's
good.
got, I'm really just blanking on names, but long day, but it's also 40,000 degrees in Toronto right now. But definitely check that out because it really plays with all the conventions of what we think that fiction can do. I loved it. So
it was really good. Ministry of Time. Yes, sometimes I read stuff in Galley like so long ago. And then it comes out and I forget.
Release days don't mean anything to me anymore for my books or anybody else's, right? Because people are like, I've read the new one. And I'm like, oh, that's not out for 8 months. Yeah. Oh, you got a Galley copy. Oh, I didn't even fix that spelling mistake yet. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy. Robyn, you said you had one?
Yeah, I read Night Watching by Tracy Sierra.
Oh.
Scary. It's not horror. It's not anything gory. It's just the most tense. Oh my God. It's just like I was reading in bed and I was like, I don't know if I should be reading this right now. My heart was just like rabbiting in my chest. It's very good. It was like Jimmy Fallon has a book club, which I never knew.
Yes, that's right.
His selection.
That's right. He selected that one.
It's a really scary, good book. Sorry, go ahead.
Coming from somebody from the genre that says it's scary, I like that because it's like,
thematically it's all about like not believing women, and it's very timely. And as a reader, you're like, I don't know if I believe her anymore. And then it has such a satisfying conclusion. It's wow. It's crazy.
I love it. Okay, Nina, do you have one that you?
Well, yeah, actually, I'm reading one right now. It's called Mr. Magic, Kirsten White.
Oh, I've heard that was good.
And somebody lent it to me. A friend lent it to me a while ago, and I could not seem to get around to it. But it's kind of almost like I was meant to read it now.
I actually think she lives in San Diego.
It's about this a group of people. They as children they were in a TV show that seems to have been erased from existence and nobody remembers it, and something strange is going on, and it is very creepy. I think it actually is horror, and rather than thriller. It's definitely headed in that direction, but it's very weird that I'm reading it now.
Yeah, it's the one that has a pink, isn't it a pink cover?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Well, I had to move everything to have my book in the background, so I don't know where I put it. It's here.
Oh, I love the concept.
Yeah, that's neat.
Yeah. All right, ladies, thank you so much for coming in. I'm going to just really quickly ask each of you to tell people where they should follow you. And well, before we do that though, and this is always horrible to ask because you're here promoting a new book, but what are you working on next? So Robyn, let's start with you. What are you working on next?
Okay, I'm currently writing another thriller. It's called The Spanish House, and it's about a couple. They're from New York and their marriage has been rocked by infidelity. So they decide they're going to leave everything behind and they buy this house in the hills of Costa Brava. And they're going to rebuild their marriage and fix up this old house and fall back in love with each other. And then these two backpackers in a van break down on the road and end up staying there. And there might be another reason that they're actually there. And everything goes terribly wrong.
Ooh, I love it. It sounds great. And if people want to follow you, you like do an Instagram where you what do you like to do?
I'm on Instagram, R Harding Writer. And I'm on Facebook, Robyn Harding.
Okay.
Robyn with the Y. Yeah.
Robyn with the Y. All right, Nina, what are you working on next?
Well, I actually, it's in a very delicate point in the process right now, so I cannot talk about it yet, but it is also, it's inspired by something. Well, this one time when, a couple of years ago, my significant other and I, we were visiting, this little house for sale, and we were driving through this, like suddenly out of nowhere, a little town. And so we're passing through this town that looks really shady, and I'm like, oh wow, I hope our car doesn't break down, because this looks like the kind of town that's actually a cult. And then I go home and I Google it, and sure enough, there is a cult. And so yeah, that inspired a whole book, and hopefully it will
Nice.
yeah, it will be coming
Love
your way
that.
sometime soon.
I like
Sounds
it.
Yeah.
really good. It sounds really good. And where should people, if they want to follow what you're doing, are you Instagram as well?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram, Nina Laurin, and on Twitter, Nina Laurin Books, or whatever the hell Twitter's called now.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, I can't let go of that thing for some reason.
It's like an addiction. It's like watching a
Still-
train.
I can't
I
call
don't want
it
it.
X.
It's like I have to see. Okay, thanks, Nina. And Rachel, what are your
A million things. But first, I want to say I forgot to mention Andrew Piper. Piper, Pyper, Canadian suspense. Friend of mine, lives in Toronto. Amazing. His new one is coming out of another name. His writing name for this is Mason Cole. It's called William. It's all about AI. So it's a horror with AI. So yeah, like amazing. Like definitely look that up.
I blurbed it. It's terrifying, and it is
yes.
horror. It's
But he's
full-on
so
horror.
nice, and his books are so terrifying. But I'm finishing up draft 80,000 of Operation Scarlet, which was supposed to be out this summer, but it just didn't happen. It's coming out eventually with HarperCollins. It is a retelling of the Scarlet Pimpernel story in World War II, Paris and Rouen. I'm working on a biography of Sir Christopher Wren, the architect, for the London publisher Pen and Sword that'll be coming out next year. And then the next physical book you get from me is in November. It's a collaborative story called The Liberty Scarf with Janelle Szelski, who I'll be interviewing for the Winged Tiara next month, and Amy Runyon. The three of us together collaborated on this beautiful World War I. I'm so used to World War II. World War I. It's set in the Great War in Brussels, in London, in France, at the front. It's just romantic and wonderful. And three women's fates are tied together by a scarf designed at Liberty store in London, which is one of my favorite places to visit when I'm on research trips there. So that's what's going on with me, but you will all see me on Thursday for Maria, like something that is nothing like the books we talked about tonight. Michelle Morin's new book about Maria von Trapp, which is going to be so fun to talk about.
I know, another one of my favorites. I love the Von Trapp family. And for people to follow you, you are on.
I am Rach K. Mick. Yep, Twitter, Rach K. Mick. I like to talk about publishing there and give tips and tricks. Instagram is also Rach K. Mick. So is Facebook. Just stalk me and I will tell you what I'm reading, but mostly tell you how to like not give up on the publishing sphere, and sometimes get angry about the way men talk about women's rights.
Yeah, something interesting about that.
Keeps popping up right now.
I'm not sure why that's such it's just incredible. Ladies, Nina, thank you. Robyn, thank you. Rachel, as always, thank you. This was wonderful.
Thanks so much, Julie.
And this is being recorded so people can watch this on YouTube after. So with that, happy reading, everybody.
Bye. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.